This is a 2004 Walking Liberty silver dollar. Stamped across the top of the coin, it says Liberty. This is a 2004 Kennedy half dollar. It too says Liberty. This is a 1971 silver dollar. Across the top, Liberty. This is a 1940 Mercury dime. Across the top, it says Liberty. This is an 1885 silver dollar. Across the top, it says Liberty. Do you see it? In 1792, Congress orders that all American coins will be inscribed with the word Liberty. Liberty appears first in 1793 on the American 1-cent piece. George Washington once said that firearms stand next in importance to the Constitution itself. They are the American people's liberty teeth and keystone under independence. Hi, my name is Brandon, and thanks for tuning into my channel. Before we get into the video, I'd like to take a second to give a shout out to Nutnfancy. Nutnfancy has been running the Nutnfancy project for about 4 years, providing great information to gearheads and gun enthusiasts all over the world. His recent call to action videos have inspired me to start my own channel and have actually set the topic for this video. So please check out his channel, give him a subscription. The topic for this video is going to be the Second Amendment. But before we get into that, there's 2 subtopics I'd like to cover very quickly that are in the politics of today, and we need to establish some definitions. So the big topic in the news today is the president and his recent 23 executive orders or executive privileges that he signed into existence a couple days ago. So let's take a look at the assault weapon, what the assault weapons ban is, and what it's about. Before we get into that, take a quick look at the Military Arms channel. There's a link below. They give a great demonstration of the difference between an assault weapon and a semi-automatic civilian sports rifle. The definitions are important, their demonstration is great, and they have all the information right there for you. Great channel. Give them a subscription and check it out. So what is the difference between a military assault rifle and a semi-automatic sport rifle? Well, let's take a look at the picture here really quick. It's all in the mechanics. The military assault rifle has a select fire switch that allows you to go from the safe mode to a semi-automatic and then to a burst or fully automatic mode. The fully automatic mode allows the firearm to discharge the entire magazine with one trigger pull. Basically, when you pull the trigger, the firearm continues to fire until the magazine is empty or you release the trigger, whichever comes first. The burst mode for the select fire switch allows the firearm to discharge 2 to 3 rounds, depending on its configuration, per trigger pull. That means when you pull the trigger, the firearm discharges 2 bullets or 3 bullets, and then you have to release the trigger for the firing mechanism to reset, and then pull the trigger again for the firearm to fire another 2 to 3 rounds. The semi-automatic mode, as in the civilian sport rifle, discharges 1 round per trigger pull. Basically that means if you pull the trigger, the firearm shoots 1 round, and then you have to release the trigger for the firing mechanism to reset. And then you pull the trigger again, and the firearm discharges 1 more round. The second part you need to understand about the assault rifle or the civilian semi-automatic sport rifle is magazine capacity. This, as pictured here, is a standard capacity magazine. It holds 30 rounds and is used in the semi-automatic sport rifle. It is not a high-capacity magazine. It is not a large-capacity magazine. This is a standard capacity magazine. 30 rounds is a standard capacity for this magazine size for the semi-automatic sport rifle. It's very important to understand those definitions because the media wants you to believe that this is an evil weapon and that this is an evil magazine because it holds too many bullets. This is standard capacity for this type of firearm. The second topic I want to talk about before we get into the Second Amendment is to go over some statistics. First, let's thank Amidst the Noise for his great video. Check out the link below. Check out his channel. Give him a subscription. He's got some great information. He tells it like it is. He looks at the facts. He looks at the real numbers, the real statistics. And his video is very well spoken, and he does a great job. So thank you. And I pulled all these statistics straight from him. He's already done the work, so there's no reason for me to recreate what he's already done. Okay, let's take a look at the FBI Uniform Crime Report. For 1992, they recorded 757 violent crimes per 100,000 people. Now, let's skip ahead to 2011. The FBI Uniform Crime Report recorded 386 violent crimes per 100,000 people. Take those two numbers, 757 in 1992 and 386 in 2011. That's a 50% drop in violent crime. Why don't you see that in the media? Why don't you hear about that? Nobody is talking about that number. Despite all of the firearms that are owned across this country, there are less violent crimes nowadays than there were 20 years ago in 1992. 50% drop. That is very significant. So some people say, well, you still have a lot of violent crime, and if we take away all the guns, there won't be any more violent crime because there won't be any more guns. Well, let's take a look at one more statistic before we make that conclusion. Okay, so now let's take a look at the Home Office Statistical Bulletin, which is the England and Wales equivalent of the FBI Universal Crime Report. In 2011, England and Wales had a recorded 1,361 violent crimes per 100,000 people. Let me say that number again. 1,361 violent crimes per 100,000 people. In 2011, the United States was what? 386? That is 3.5 times the U.S. violent crime rate for England and Wales. So England and Wales, with its strict gun control and gun bans, have 3.5 times the violent crime rate of the United States in 2011. So the argument that less guns equals less violent crime is not true. History shows it. The statistics don't lie. It's all in black and white right there. You can't deny the numbers. So you ask yourself, how is that possible that England and Wales has a higher violent crime rate than the United States? That just doesn't make sense because nobody has guns. Well, there's a quote that I'd like to read that might help explain that a little bit. Laws that forbid the carrying of arms disarm only those who are neither inclined nor determined to commit crimes. Such laws make things worse for the assaulted and better for the assailant. They serve rather to encourage than prevent homicides. For an unarmed man may be attacked with greater confidence than an armed one. That quote was by Cesare Beccaria. And let me tell you a little bit about him so you can kind of understand where he came from that quote. So I'm going to read this to you just because it's a little easier to read it than try and recite it back to you. So Cesare Beccaria was an Italian journalist, philosopher, and politician who was best known for his work in the field of criminology that deals with the philosophy and practice of various societies in their attempts to repress criminal activity and satisfy public opinion via an appropriate treatment regime for persons convicted of criminal offenses. So this guy was almost like one of the founding fathers of our modern criminal justice system and our philosophies and mentalities behind that. You can Google him, take a look at the quote. That's pretty much from Wikipedia right there. So it gives you all the information and history you want to know about the guy. Now that you understand what an assault weapon is, and you have seen the real statistics, not just what the media is showing you, you need to understand that in all gun-related murders, the rifle is used in about 3.5% of all gun murders. And the semi-automatic sport rifle, the assault rifle, as the media likes to call it, is only a subset of the rifle category. So the focus on the assault weapon for an assault weapons ban or a magazine capacity ban or whatever, they're focusing on a number that is statistically insignificant. 3.5% in the rifle category, and the semi-automatic sport rifle is only a subset of that. Your percentages drop drastically and is statistically insignificant. So at this point you have to ask yourself, well, if it's statistically insignificant, why is there so much focus on it? Well, there's a reason for that. And let me read you another quote here. A Washington Post editorial dated September 15th, 1994, said it best at the beginning of the original Clinton assault weapon ban. No one should have any illusions about what was accomplished by the ban. Assault weapons play a part in only a small percentage of crime. The provision is mainly symbolic. Its virtue will be if it turns out to be, as hoped, by the protectionists, by the anti-gun people, by the socialists, by the liberal populace. That was my input there, by the way. It is a stepping stone to broader gun control. That's the truth behind the matter. It has nothing to do with saving the children or protecting people, because it's statistically insignificant. Okay, so what's the big deal? It's the assault weapons ban. We're not taking away all your guns. So why is everybody up in arms? Why are you making such a big fuss about this? Well, let me tell you a little bit more. So let's look at the evidence. They say they want to protect the children. They say they want to reduce violence and save lives. So you have to ask yourself, how can you ban something statistically insignificant and expect any relevant or real change? There are more children killed every year by drowning in swimming pools than there are killed by assault weapons. There are more children killed every year by abusive parents than there are killed by assault weapons. How many kids every year are injured or killed in some sort of sport-related accident? How many kids die every year in the United States from starvation? So that's how you see through their smoke and mirrors. When the answer that they come up with is statistically insignificant to the question or the problem that they have identified. Don't be fooled into thinking that it stops here. This is just a stepping stone into greater gun control. So if you want to protect the children, then let's take a look at the real statistics, figure out where the real problems are, and make some real changes that will have some real impacts. When any nation mistrusts its citizens with guns, it is sending a clear message. It no longer trusts its citizens because such a government has evil plans. George Washington. All right, so we looked at assault weapons and the definition of an assault rifle, how it's different from the semi-automatic sport rifle. We looked at magazine capacity and what a standard capacity magazine was. And we also looked at some statistics that shed some real light on the true agenda behind this gun control legislation that's being pushed. So now let's get into the Second Amendment. Or actually, let's take a look at some quotes from the Founding Fathers who actually wrote the Second Amendment. Let's try and get into their minds and understand why they wrote it the way they did. A free people ought not to be armed and disciplined, but they should have sufficient arms and ammunition to maintain a status of independence from any who might attempt to abuse them, which would include their own government. George Washington. He got it right there in that quote. A free people ought not to be armed and disciplined, but they should have sufficient arms and ammunition to maintain a status of independence from any who might attempt to abuse them, even their own government. It doesn't get any more clear than that. The very atmosphere of firearms anywhere restrains evil interference. They deserve a place of honor with all that is good. George Washington. The very atmosphere of firearms restrains evil. The constitutions of most of our states and of the United States assert that all power is inherent in the people, that they may exercise it by themselves, that it is their right and duty to be at all times armed, that they are entitled to freedom of person, freedom of religion, freedom of property, and freedom of press. Thomas Jefferson. No free man shall ever be debarred the use of arms. Thomas Jefferson. For a people who are free and who mean to remain so, a well-organized and armed militia is their best security. Thomas Jefferson. Now, don't go off on the militia thing. We'll talk about that in just a minute. When the governments fear the people, there is liberty. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny. Thomas Jefferson. The strongest reason for the people to retain the right to keep and bear arms is as a last resort to protect themselves against tyranny in government. Thomas Jefferson. Arms in the hands of the citizens may be used at individual discretion for the defense of the country, the overthrow of tyranny, or private self-defense. John Adams. The said Constitution shall never be construed to authorize Congress to infringe the just liberties of the press or the rights of conscience, or to prevent the people of the United States who are peaceable citizens from keeping their own arms. Samuel Adams. That last quote said it best. The Constitution shall never be construed to authorize Congress to infringe the just liberties of the press or the rights of conscience, or to prevent the people of the United States who are peaceable citizens from keeping their own arms. That says it all. It's perfectly clear. You can see from these quotes that the Founding Fathers knew and understood the risks of letting a government run unchecked, the risks of letting a people fall to tyranny. All right, so let's talk about militias really quick, because I had a quote in there that said something about a well-armed militia, and the Second Amendment also has the word militia in it. So we need to take a look at militia, what it is, just really quickly. So according to U.S. Code, there are actually two classes of militia. Wait, what? U.S. Code? U.S. Code actually addresses what a militia is? Yes, it's in U.S. Code. So in U.S. Code, a militia is composed of all able-bodied U.S. citizens between the ages of 17 and 45. The two classes of militia are the organized and the unorganized militia. According to U.S. Code, the organized militia consists of all able-bodied U.S. citizens between the age of 17 and 45 who are members of the National Guard. The unorganized militia, again, according to U.S. Code, is all able-bodied United States citizens ages 17 to 45. There's no other caveat on the end of that. All able-bodied American citizens between the ages of 17 and 45 are automatically members of the United States unorganized militia, according to U.S. Code. It's not my definition. It's not Wikipedia. I'm not making it up. It's U.S. Code. You're automatically a member of the unorganized militia. If you're over 45, you just have to volunteer. There's nothing restricting you from being a part of the unorganized militia. You just have to volunteer. However, between the ages of 17 and 45, you are automatically considered a member of the United States unorganized militia. I made the decision to volunteer once before and serve my country as a member of the United States Air Force. My volunteerism didn't end when I left the service. I continue to uphold my oath that I took when I was enlisted. I swore to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. You see, the Founding Fathers didn't get the option to volunteer. They had to fight for their freedom. I guess you could say they did volunteer. They could have remained subjugated, but they chose to fight. When the Founding Fathers wrote the Bill of Rights, the Revolutionary War had only been over for about 5 years when the Constitutional Convention convened to review the final document. It was fresh in their minds what the Founding Fathers had fought for, why they fought for it, and the incredible price they paid in order to earn their freedom. The first 12 amendments were approved by Congress in September of 1789. The Bill of Rights was eventually ratified in December 15th of 1791. The Founding Fathers, when they wrote the Bill of Rights, they wrote it to protect the basic rights of U.S. citizens. The rights as written in the Bill of Rights, the Founding Fathers believed are inalienable rights that were granted to all the people by God, their Creator. The Bill of Rights was written to protect those rights, to provide assurances that a just government could not be empowered to infringe or take those rights away. So I hope you found these concepts easy to understand. I think the Founding Fathers had it right on the money. They had a very good understanding of what it took to keep a nation free. If you can't understand these, then I fear that you've been lost to the true meaning of freedom, and that someday I hope you will be found peacefully and not under the boot of tyranny. So God bless you. Thank you very much for watching, and I leave you with one last quote. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We did not pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Ronald Reagan. God bless our military service members, past and present. Thank you very much for watching. Long live the Republic. Keep your powder dry, folks.